Here we are again, talking about coaching and psychedelics. And we have a very special podcast guest today because we have Jascha Renner here. And it's a very special setting for us as well because we all are German and we all speak English today. And some of us, like Yannick, you are very, very comfortable in your English. But Jascha and me, we don't speak that much English in our daily life. So it's very special. And
thank you guys. Thank you for making your minds available to way more people than otherwise would be able to. My wife is currently learning German, so kudos to everybody who does it.
Which is probably harder than learning English, is it?
Oh yeah, way. I mean, for me it was super easy. I picked it up like super naturally when I was around 1 year old.
Okay.
Yeah, but for other people, it seems to be very hard. So it's very different to other languages. Yeah. So yeah, but good. We're here and we have a lot of questions and we are very curious, Jascha. And as you guys probably already hear, I'm a bit like my nose is quite stuffed and I feel quite dizzy today. So I got a cold this weekend and I'm very happy if Yannick is leading this interview a bit more and I just jump in with questions that I have.
Winter is coming.
Yes.
Winter. Yeah, but then it takes another 6 years. We know that. But yeah, you frequent listeners or viewers of this podcast will know that I'm quite happy to jump in anyway with questions. So yes, I'm excited about this because we were both guests on Jascha's podcast first. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
And that was amazing. It's a really good conversation. Jascha's work is really impressive. So we're happy to have him here. And he's one of the people who does very active coaching work in that space and also does so much more. So it's good to have you here.
Too much.
Not just because you're mesmerizing podcast voice, but also because you do a lot of work and you activate a lot of people and share a lot of conversations that need to be in the overground, not in the underground. So philosophically, I guess we're very aligned with why we're doing what we're doing here. So thank you for making time.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here, and I think you hit it spot on. Activating a lot of people. I think that's my. I feel like that's my duty, to activate people in terms of psychedelic work, and it makes me happy if somebody is curious about psychedelics after listening to my podcast or whatever. That's really what I want to do.
Why is it important to you?
I think I'm one of these classic guys in the psychedelic space who has made a big transformation in his life with the help of psychedelics. And now he wants to help others, like, they helped me so much. Now my glass is overflowing. Now I want to pass it on. And actually it's funny, this Saturday I had a psychedelic session, a solo session with myself. And again, I wrote down in my notebook, I want to show people what psychedelics can do, their power, what they're capable of. And I don't know, I can't really tell, but it just feels like my passion, my purpose. I just want to do it. It feels right.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's already a bunch of questions I could ask, but let's start with what we usually start with, which is just to give a little bit more context for where you're speaking from. And in a way, you've already done that. But I do want to ask you the same question as we usually ask people. Somebody sits next to you at a dinner party. Let's say the dinner party is full of coaches, right? Because we're at a party here mostly with coaches, I'm assuming. People who are interested in personal development, professional development. So you're sitting at this dinner party with all of us coaches. Somebody turns to you and is like, hey, what do you do? What do you tell them?
I think first thing is like, it's special. I don't know if you can understand, or I'm not sure if you know what it is. It's like, you know psychedelics? You know that? You know psychedelics? That's the first thing I would ask, because I think I'm not the kind of guy who would just, or I'm not the kind of, I think it's not the kind of topic which I just would just put out there and see how they react. I first want to see where they are. And that's something that's really important for me, because that's part of my job, to meet people where they are, meet people with their understanding of what my work is, what psychedelics are, and then give them the information that would be really helpful for them right now. Because if I tell them I'm doing we're organizing psychedelic retreats and we're helping people to use psychedelics in their life, then they're like, it could be like, oh, aren't these like dangerous things where you jump out of the window? And so this could of course happen. So I think I would ask back and ask what they think about psychedelics, and then continue to tell them what I do.
Yeah, it seemed quite careful that you would like, psychedelics, have you heard of it? Is that like that's consciously careful rather than consciously very confident?
Yeah, I think because I'm at least in Germany, so maybe for listeners who aren't from Germany, I think in Germany, as soon as you Google psychedelics, or if you enter Psychedelika, it's called in German, if you enter it, you will definitely see my face somewhere. So I don't know, it just happened. So whatever you do, if you just know who I am, you just see me. So that means that I'm really getting a lot of responses, like in all kinds of colors. I'm getting people
in all kinds of colors.
Yeah, and also, like different color tones. The response is either really aggressive, or it's really open, or it's really interested. So I get different kinds of responses, and I think that's why I got a bit cautious when I talk about my work in general. So I want to meet people where they are, and that's, I think, why I'm a little bit hesitant to just tell them what I do. But let's continue this. If someone would say, I know what psychedelics are, it's interesting, then I would just tell them, so we're trying to normalize psychedelics for German people, basically. We try to provide them with the needed information they would need to get closer to this topic themselves. And we also go one step further. If they really decide for themselves, that's something I would like to do, or I'm more interested in it, then we can give them more guidance. We can give them a psychedelic coaching, or we can even offer them psychedelic retreats legally in the Netherlands. So, and a lot more things. As you said in the beginning, I'm doing many things in the psychedelic space, and I'm also in a transition phase at the moment where I'm really trying to think, what do I really want to stand for, and which path I want to go down for the next months or years.
Right. So focus in on having started to do many, many things, including a very successful podcast called Set&Setting. I should mention it by name. It's very, very helpful to put information out there. And now kind of focusing in on, what do I really want to do with this, and which elements of this work am I going to use forward?
And it's always changing, every, let's say every psychedelic experience is also changing again my view on the world, my view on myself, and what I want to do. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I did a darkness retreat. So I spent a few days in total darkness. Wow. And I came out of it and I said, wow, this is something people should do. Guys, have you tried this? This is amazing. And a couple of days ago, I did like my first MDMA solo therapy session. And I'm like, oh my God, guys, you need to do this. This is amazing. So I'm always trying new things and changing my perspectives. And I think what I like to do is just share that with people, share like an honest, authentic view of the actual experience because my face is out there anyways, without thinking about if that is something you could say, if that is something you should share. Like I'm really sharing mostly everything. I'm even sharing like my childhood trauma and everything, because I think that's really what people need to hear. It's not just, take this drug and then for example, what I see a lot in the spaces or in the what's happening in the media is take this drug and your depression goes away. Yeah, but why? What's the cause of the depression, and how do do psychedelics influence this cause or your view on the cause and so on? So that's why I'm thinking, just be honest about it.
Yeah. Julia, you know Jascha more than me. You've been doing some work together. I wonder what you would add that people should know about and where he's speaking from.
So listeners know, I'm part of his team for the Set&Setting retreats in Holland. And so we work together quite closely, very nicely. So I really enjoy these retreats and working with that people from the team there. And we also have there this focus on coaching, basically. So what you just mentioned was like you take psychedelics and your depression is gone. So this big movement of it's very good for people who have depression or similar psychological things they struggle with. And it's not only about therapy, but it's also coaching. And that's the main focus also the retreats go to in that direction. So the question is, why do you think, Jascha, that especially this connection between psychedelics and coaching is such a good connection and it's a good match?
I think what psychedelics do, in a sense, is not changing things, but giving you a different perspective on things that have, it doesn't change it, but it gives you a new perspective on what is. And I think that's what you do when you coach as well. Mostly. I mean, sometimes you mentor as well, you tell them the theory and everything, it's important, but mostly you try to help people to go a step back and see what is from a different perspective. And I think psychedelics really facilitate that process. It really makes it a lot easier to do that, not just like during a coaching, but also like in general for your personality. So what I learned when I'm coaching people, not when they are on psychedelics, but if they have already made some psychedelic experience, I noticed that they're kind of more open towards everything, more open towards themselves, more open towards new perspectives. And sometimes I think like, oh, okay, what was there before? Were they first open and that's why they take psychedelics? Or did they first take psychedelics and that's why they're open? So I'm not quite sure there.
Chicken and egg,
but, yeah, exactly.
Or dog and owner.
Oh, I've heard that before.
No.
Is an owner choosing the dog because the dog is looking like the owner, or is the dog becoming to look like the owner?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I need to think on that. But yeah, I think they just fit good together in general.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, could you tell us a bit about how you kind of found your path into the coaching work? Because you're doing quite a lot and quite a lot of different things. There's retreats, you mentioned some education, there's some coaching. How did you find your way into coaching, and to what extent is coaching part of what you do?
Yeah. Well, how did I find? So I think the first thing I did was coach myself a lot. Or let myself be coached by psychedelic experiences and by other people, by other influences. And I worked a lot on myself. So, and at a certain point, as I said before, it felt like the glass is finally like the water is overflowing the glass. And that's when I felt I want to give back. You know, this sometimes feels like this classic psychedelic story, but yeah, that's how it felt. And then I started to talk openly about these substances and talk openly about what they did for me, how it changed me. And that's when people came to me and say, "Hey, Jascha, I like what you say. Can you maybe help me? Can you maybe help me go through that problem?" And as further as I went down that route, I also noticed what they really want is not don't want to take psychedelics. They want to solve their problems. They want to solve their challenges in their life. And I also did solve a lot of challenges in my life. So that's when I felt, hey, it just feels right to help other people overcome challenges I already have overcome. And that's how it got started. And nowadays, actually, my coaching really changed. So I do many things. We do psychedelic coachings. We help people to for mostly like beginners in psychedelics, how you can use it, how you can do microdosing, how you can do full dosing, how you can do it alone, how can you integrate it. We do integration coaching with Julia, for example. And also we have another coaching, which is not part of our psychedelic coachings, which is more personal development coaching. And that's what I'm doing mostly, but that's a little bit different. It has nothing to do with psychedelics. For me, it's more, I think it's more like, I don't really have a word for it, but it's more like trauma and deep emotion coaching. So that's how I would say it. It's more like, you have a relational, I think it's a lot of with relational problems people have with their parents, with friends, with themselves. And I like to go really deep with these people into their challenges and see what kind of emotions lurk behind the emotion you have on the surface. What's below. And I think that's really, that's something that's really fulfills me. And that's mostly what I do in terms of coaching. And I'd say from my daily work, it's not even that much, to be honest. It's maybe like 20%. And all the other 80% are mostly psychedelic education and building the companies behind it to do the psychedelic education and offer people the services.
Yeah, right. So you mentioned coaching in a couple of different contexts to like a mentoring element. There's like quite deep work. I wonder how, if at all, it's different coaching. When you say coaching, how's it different, if at all, to mentoring or to education or to therapy?
Yeah, it's, the borders are really blurry sometimes. It depends on what you want to coach them, right? For example, psychedelic coaching. For me, it's much as my opinion. For me, it's more like mentoring. For me, it's more like, okay, you have, where are you? Okay, these are the psychedelics you could take. These are the dosages, and that's how you could do it. It's more like, it feels more like mentoring. And for integration coaching, I'm not even that experienced. I think we would have to ask Julia about that.
We did.
Yeah.
For 2 hours.
Yeah, I listened to it, but only the first hour, I think. And with the coaching I do, I think I do a mix between mentoring and coaching. For me, it's always like asking them a lot of questions, see where they are, see how they feel, and then find the emotion that's like the center of the problem. I feel like that's okay. We need to go into this emotion. So now I give you a little bit of theory. How do emotions work? Why are we sometimes angry? And what could that mean? Could it mean that there are other emotions below that anger, or are you just angry at your father? Is it just the anger you need to feel, or that's the emotion you need to act on? And then I go deeper with them into the emotions and see what's below. Yeah. So.
And where did you learn to do that? Did you do any training in coaching or in working with emotions, or did that come naturally, organically, just through the conversations you've had?
Yeah, interesting. I thought about this question because I suspected that you're going to ask this question. And I think it just came to me and every time I experience new depths of my own mind, it's so amazing. I'm a better coach then. All of a sudden, I go into a session with my coachees, and it's so much better. I come so much deeper with them because I know that depth. I know that feeling of if you are scared of certain things and what that could mean for me and what's really below that. So I think in the last 8 years, I just did, to be honest, I did a lot of psychedelics, and I saw a lot of deep stuff in my own mind. And I think that's what fuels my ability and my my wanting.
Desire.
Desire. Thank you. My desire to coach other people in that regard. And there was one more thing I wanted to add. Oh yeah, of course I read a lot of books. Helps.
Yeah, we'll ask about that later. Let's not get lost in that first.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite common, right? That I see that in coaches. I've trained a lot of coaches, supervised a lot of coaches. It's very, very common that someone has gone through a particular story, has had experiences, has been faced with challenges, adversity, or very positive things in their lives, and they've gone through it, and that allows them to hold space for people with a particular quality of, I've been there, even though your experience is probably going to be different. It's never, every experience is unique, and it might be quite different to what somebody has experienced, right? And two people can go through a divorce and it's a very different experience. Two people can have a psychedelic experience. It's very, very different. Two people can have a near-death experience. It's very different.
Yeah, or a personal loss or something. That's what I thought about in the last couple of weeks. I had never had like a really deep personal loss in my family or in my life. And I wondered, could I hold space for others if they had? So it's just a question. I don't have an answer, but it's interesting to think about it. If you would need to experience something similar or not, or if you need to experience a similar emotion or a similar strength, intense of emotion.
But I think that's the same question of, do you need to have tried psychedelics if you want to become a psychedelic coach or not? So like, is a therapist who's focused on, I don't know, depression, does he need to have had a depression to bring the people really deep and to be able to accompany in that and support in that way? And I think that's the same question, where it goes in the same direction.
Yeah, I think it builds a lot of compassion. You automatically get compassion for that kind of challenge if you have experienced a challenge. For example, with depression, I have a friend who is depressed, and I think I can feel with him. I understand the pain, especially when I'm on psychedelics myself. Actually, like 2 days ago, this was one of the topics. I could feel his pain. But of course, still, I can never know how it really is, how he really feels. And maybe there's like a simulated depression I could experience or something.
Well, some psychedelic experiences have helped people to gain access to what might it be like to go crazy or to be paranoid.
Oh, yeah.
I've certainly had experiences where I've questioned whether this is gonna last or, go. And
this there was a moment.
Yeah, it's like
my new me.
If life is like this from now on, that is a really difficult, challenging human experience. And then I deeply empathized with people who have that as their state of reality every day, all day. So that helps you to empathize a lot, right? But just because somebody's been sad for a couple of days or weeks or hours, or somebody has had deep pain, they don't necessarily have access to someone's state of reality every day is deep pain. So I think we're always tourists, if it's temporary.
Did it go away for you after the experience? Or
it went away pretty quickly. But it gave me a glimpse. And I think that glimpse helps to empathize with people. So when it comes to can I work with people without having had the experience, or their experience is what we're talking about, depends on the way that we work, right? It helps to empathize, but I think it helps the client to feel that you understand them if they know you've had a similar experience. I don't think I necessarily need that. The way that I work, I don't need it because I work mostly phenomenological. That means that's my experience. It's going to be unique, right? So I'm really want to hold space for someone, regardless of what they go through. I don't know what it's like to be a CEO in the insurance industry. That's an example I bring quite often, but I can hold space for that person. Will that person trust me more if I used to be a CEO in insurance? Yeah, probably, but out of false pretenses, I think. Because my experience of having been a CEO, if I had been, would have been very different to theirs.
Yeah.
But then it depends how you work, right? What I'm hearing from you is that there's a large element of mentorship, some psychoeducation, some sharing of what you know to be true, which is really, really helpful. But it's a different way of working. And if you want to bring in helpful knowledge, then you got to know the landscape.
Yeah, the emotional landscape. I think the emotions at least are all the same for us. We might feel, phenomenologically,
still happens to me too.
it might be different, but shame will feel kind of, we know what shame is. We know what anger is. We know what...
Because I'm not so sure.
If you have felt it, if you have you ever been really angry in your life?
See, I can say yes, but I'm sure that I have no idea what you're really talking about when you say that.
I think that is a difference. Like everybody feels it in the same way, but you yourself know when you are angry, even though you might not know if there is another emotion that is underneath what you described earlier. You may be in a state of confuse this, what you really feel at that moment, with something that is triggered by something else that is underneath. But you would say then, okay, this is what anger feels for me. And still you, Yannick, you wouldn't know how it feels because it feels different. Of course.
Yeah. I might say that, when I'm really angry, I feel like part of me wants to strangle you. And when somebody else says, I was really angry, they literally go and strangle you. Is that the same emotion? Yeah, I see where you're coming from. But I want to be very careful.
I think it's also about the shared understanding of it. So if I talk to you and we talk, you share something, and then I tell you, I feel like there's a little bit of anger, and then you're like, yeah, oh yeah, there's anger. So by me, analyzing you or seeing the anger in you and telling you that I feel like there's anger, and you notice, yes, it's true. I think that's where we feel empathized. That's where we feel connected to the other person or our coach.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's dig a little bit more into your coaching approach. I'm not sure if there's something typical, but also I saw on your website there are some programs that you offer. So I wonder if there's some sort of methodology, or you already kind of hinted on a particular process that is quite open, because every person who comes for coaching is different. But what are some of the things that you always do if they exist? What might be a typical, in air quotes, coaching engagement for you when around psychedelics?
Oh, around psychedelics?
Yeah.
Okay, that's different because, as I said, the most coaching I do is without psychedelics and not in terms of psychedelics. The psychedelic coaching we do, I used to do that. Now, actually, somebody else in our team does that. And this was more about helping people to enter the psychedelic space. So people come to us, they heard about it, they heard about all the cool things, all the nice things psychedelics could do for them. And so they're scared because they also know, there are a lot of dangers. So that's why they really want to talk to somebody before they put their foot into the psychedelic space.
So they're looking for information and guidance, I'm assuming. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, okay.
Exactly, right. It's usually not, they usually don't share like their deep topics they have in themselves, because that comes afterwards usually, right? Yeah. That comes in the integration coaching. Usually the people I talk to with in our psychedelic coaching, they're really like blunt. They're really like, how do you say, they don't even know. That's what I said before. They think psychedelics make the depression go away. Like, why? How? They don't even know that it's more about psychedelics open you to the core of your depression and give you another perspective on it and reveal new emotions that are connected with your cause of your depression, for example. So I feel like I'm a bit more on the surface working with in terms of psychedelic coaching.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. I'm just like thinking of a bunch of conversations that I've had where somebody wanted to come in curious about this psychedelics and having a psychedelic experience. And it's similar to a lot of other coaching, right? Somebody comes with a presenting issue, as we often call it, right? Somebody comes in and says, here's something that I want to figure out. And then you have a conversation, and 2 hours later, the goals have changed and the process has changed and the path has changed. And I've had a good few conversations where somebody wanted to explore psychedelics, and then in the process of exploring why psychedelics, why now, the psychedelics weren't really the path to take to figure this out, or maybe it was already figured out before they didn't even need a psychedelic experience.
Yeah, that's true. I think I have these kind of conversations with people I know personally, but actually, yeah, again, so I think the content of our psychedelic coaching does not include these kind of deep conversations, so to say. So our psychedelic coaching is not the kind of coaching where we really try to help, or we really go deep into the tank and see why they want to do it. It's more about how you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
What I come across oftentimes, these kind of clients when they want to come to the retreat. So these kind of intake interviews to the first contact, really checking in with why do you want to do it now? What are your expectations? What did you hear about? So these kind of things there, it's a big mix between some have a real clear topic they want to go, and that it's maybe too clear. So to bring down these expectations and to explain what psychedelics can do. And the other part is people who are just curious and say like, my life is good, I'm fine, I figured it out, and I just want to know more about psychedelics. And then afterwards, like this kind of real coaching deeper in form of integration then can happen afterwards. But I think that's like, it's a different group of people we are targeting.
Yeah. I think so. As you said, Julia, we have the retreat, and then we have the psychedelic classic coaching. Also, our psychedelic coaching also comes with a video course on psychedelics. So by that, you already see it's more about the information. And when they go to the retreat, it's about the experience. They want to now have the experience, and also our approach with the retreat is, of course, completely different, because we have like psychological screening, we have a medical screening, and we have the screening again with, for example, with our facilitators that just want to check out, are you really ready for that? Is it maybe just, you want to run away from something? Do you know what you're getting into here? Are you aware of your internal struggles? Or are you just, why you really want to do it? And I think when you ask ask people so why you really want to do it, then there comes a lot more to the surface. And it's funny whenever I hear, I'm just curious, I want to try it. I already know. Okay, you're just curious. Okay, so you don't want to go deeper. Okay, so and why you really? So because, for example, I saw that with me when I went to the darkness retreat. So like until 2-3 weeks before, I said, I'm just curious. And then the weeks before, I really noticed. I think I have a lot of struggles in my life right now. I think with my parents. Oh shit! I don't want to think about it. So. That's something I noticed, that we all have something on our plate. We all have something where psychedelics could really help us with our deep struggles. And it's maybe sometimes you just need to give people the incentive to share about that and to really,
It's a super interesting space to be there, right? Because a lot of people come to do work when they have an issue or there's a problem or there's a pain, something that we need to make go away. I love it when somebody, maybe not saying I'm just curious, because it kind of is downplaying how immense curiosity is. But if somebody comes, I'm good, I'm doing well, I'm curious though. And I'm like, ooh, what are you curious about? And what might that be about? And I love that in my coaching, because it's difficult, as you say, the lines can be quite blurred. My framework is existential, right? So there's big questions, and the line to when it becomes therapeutic can be really blurry. Generally, I draw one of the important lines is how resourceful is this person, right? To what extent do they hold themselves in life? If somebody's just can't cope in a deep hole, I don't think coaching is the best way forward for them. But if somebody's generally doing quite okay, they still might have problems, they still might have pains, but they might also just have curiosity. So I love working with that. And particularly in psychedelics, I choose to work a lot more with people who are curious rather than people who want to heal from something. That's just how I chose to work, because I think that's where, coming in with my positive psychology lens as well, that's where so much potential lies in psychedelics that is not completely, but largely unexplored, at least academically. Like And that's where coaching came from traditionally. People that are functioning relatively well, if you wanted to call it that, and they want to develop, they want to grow, they want to learn, and there can still be an intention, right? And if the intention is, I just want to explore, see what else is there, see what I might not be paying attention to at the moment, then I think that's wonderful foundation for psychedelic coaching or any coaching, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's made me think, because I think it's, for me, it was really interesting how well functioning I am in my life, but at the same time, how much trauma I also have in me from my childhood and from my past. So I think that's
not a line there either, no?
Yeah, it feels weird. Because I thought I don't have so much it can't be that much. I mean, I'm happy. Come on, can't be that much. And there's so much, but not in a sense there's so much. Oh my God, no. More in the sense of, wow, there's so much to heal and to see and to feel, and this is not something bad. Yeah.
Yeah, just because you're coming for healing or you seek healing doesn't mean you're broken, right? We might need to heal something in our hand, but we can operate pretty well in our life, especially if we're, I don't know, maybe hand is not the great best example, but like if we're doing a job from Zoom and we don't walk anywhere, we could do it without legs, and if we have a pain in our leg, then, we might seek some healing for that, but actually we're functioning quite well. People just don't see our legs, or they don't see our pain.
I think what you said was really nice, that if we can cope with it ourselves, then we're like one of these people, well functioning. And if we can't cope with it ourselves, then we may be drawn to like drug addiction or any kind of other addiction or anything, bad habit. And then you would say we more would need therapy, right?
I think so. I mean, I know there's some coaches who do fantastic work in that kind of realm, but I always think it's risky, especially given that the majority of coaches have very limited amount of training. They might have lots of transferable skills and they might have trained in their own ways for many decades. But there's a reason why training is in place and why people do 5 years of supervised practice and placements in institutions. And there's a lot of things wrong with the system and institutions. And there's many people do good work, but also I see a lot of people, especially in the psychedelic coaching field, that they're so taken by the potential and their own positive experience with it that I think they can guide quite vulnerable people to opening some doors, maybe way too quick and way too early, and then are not necessarily around afterwards to hold what they've opened.
Yeah.
I saw these kind of cases, and another thing I wanted to add on that is, because the lines also here get really blurry in terms of when can you cope yourself, or what is coping yourself and what isn't coping with yourself, because I mean, we all have little addictions. If we're addicted to work, addicted to sugar, addicted to gambling, I don't know, these kind of little things that doesn't seem like a big deal. But in my experience, I also do cope with things. I also do cope with work. And so does it mean I can't cope with it myself? Does it mean I need something external to feel better, to not feel the underlying pain? Do I need therapy? Maybe. It wouldn't hurt, but also I don't really need it, or do I? So these are the kind of questions.
Yeah, exactly. Good questions that every coach should ask themselves, right? And coach is just a word, right? There's practitioners, people who work around psychedelics and help people learn, develop, heal. I'm careful with healing. I don't really want to. Coaching, I like healing.
I think in Germany you're not allowed to use it, right? On the website, like there's like these kind of policies that you are not allowed to use that word.
I know psychedelic retreats websites who definitely use it.
Yeah.
So.
About healing, no?
Yeah.
I'm also I'm hesitating to use it, but sometimes it feels like healing. So I'm like, it does feel like it.
Well, sometimes
self-heal or something.
Sometimes coaching has therapeutic effects. Does that make the coach a therapist? Well, that really depends on what kind of frame you put around the word therapy. And that's a really interesting ongoing debate in coaching, particularly because that's completely unregulated. So, that is fascinating and really liberating and interesting, and gives a lot more people access to having support when they go through these journeys. On the other hand, it's also potentially risky, and it puts, some vulnerable people seek work, seek support. And then somebody who's really good at marketing and business and, just a character and creates trust and had their own experiences. But to what extent are they keeping you safe while they work with you?
I think it has a lot to do with responsibility, because I feel like the more the person would need healing or a therapist, the more you kind of need to take responsibility for that person, since this person cannot take as much responsibility for themselves.
Why we often
they? Because they're probably not capable enough, because that's how they cope, maybe.
You're talking about a person who's seeking the psychedelic experience and some support, who are in a space where they feel they can't cope.
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed that with our retreats, for example, because we do not allow people on our retreats who are, for example, on medication or are like in this kind of space, in this kind of a feel like this at the moment. And we often get really angry emails. Angry emails from these people that why we do offer it, why cannot I take part of it? And often they say it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I just take the medication. I just take the SSRIs because I don't know. I just take it, but it's not that bad. That's often what they say. So they really want it, but also I don't know. It feels like that we would need to take responsibility for that, and that's what we don't want to do. That's how it feels.
I think there's a really important word of warning in there, is that when coaches out there, because a lot of coaches are listening to this podcast who either work in that space already or want to work in this space. And it is highly likely, I would say, that this kind of thing happens a lot, right? Somebody comes to you and they're downplaying whatever screening questions you ask. Yeah. They're probably going to be but chances are that at least some of them will be downplaying their experience or the risk in order to be able to work with you.
Yeah, we had some of these people, definitely. We had people that revealed after the retreat that, for example, their mother had a psychosis or something. So they don't, even though we have psychological screening, we have like a thorough one.
It's like usually minutes. An exclusion criteria, right?
Yeah, and we have like almost 1 hour long psychological screening with one of our therapists, and they didn't tell it. So they didn't tell us. So it's really crazy. You can never know for sure.
And what do you do as a coach, perhaps, then in a retreat center when that line seems to be overstepped, or you find out at some point that someone discloses something that they really should have disclosed before, or maybe that just wasn't available to them, or they didn't do it. I don't want to recall any intentions, but what do you do when that kind of situation happens where you're like, "Ooh, I'm not sure whether I'm the right person to work with here"?
Tell them.
Tell them what?
Tell them. I think you would more need like a therapist or like a therapy, because I don't feel like skilled enough, or I'm not the right person. We always try to tell them more that we are not the right for them, rather than they are not the right for us. I think it's just feels better for both sides.
I think it's very important, that it's not you too broken, but this is not the kind of work I do.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. Julia, is there a question that's calling you?
I had one, but it's gone now.
Here
is around psychedelic substances, because you are working in Germany mainly with at least with content. So how do you, or what struggles do you feel at the moment in Germany? Because there are substances who are highly illegal. There are other substances that feel even stronger that are legal. There are like LSD, where there's always coming a new form of, and these kind of things. So how do you manage to work in this area in Germany where there are a lot of regulations, and what do you feel is the most the biggest struggle in that, or the most challenging?
I think the most challenging is to have the guts to just do it. And I think that's the one thing you really, really need working in that space in Germany, for example. I think what we do is Set&Setting with all our endeavors. We don't do anything illegal. And let's say something is probably a bit more in the gray zone, but I think we don't do anything illegal, and that's something we really take care of, and we're really, it's important to us. So, for example, the retreats are in the Netherlands, and the psychedelic coaching doesn't say, like, we don't give them any advice to how to buy it. So you need to buy it yourself. And in general, we try to speak of our experience, and we also put disclaimers. I mean, you can say anything and just put a disclaimer before it, and then you're safe. this kind of thing. And also, we have the research chemicals, as you said, like actually at the moment it's 1D LSD, which is a legal substitute of LSD, and you can buy it in Germany 100% legally. Actually, I saw there are LSD retreats in Germany, 1D LSD retreats in Germany, which is crazy. And there are in Berlin, I think there are brick and mortar shops where you can buy 1D LSD, and you can get like a coaching there, or you can ask how to use it and everything. So the people always find their ways through it. And I think in the end, how it feels for me, we're still a minority. It's still not a big thing. I mean, we're in the space and psychedelics, we think like, oh, this is the next big thing. It's so amazing, psychedelic renaissance. Wow. But I think if you compare it to the general public, we're still really small. I actually saw, I don't know if you've seen that, when I was scrolling Instagram a couple of weeks ago, and there was an ad for an ayahuasca retreat. And I'm not going to say the name of it, but they're just openly playing ayahuasca retreat Instagram ads on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh wow!
Because nobody really cares. Nobody really is prosecuting it to the end. I guess nobody's really caring that much about psychedelic work. Yeah, but again, the biggest challenge in the end for me is to know. For example, I think one part of me is like, I think if you would have an enemy, like a really strong enemy, and he really would try everything he could do to prosecute you, to make the police get you, I'd say. I think that's something I would be scared of. So, but in the end, I still do it because it feels right. It feels more important than listening to the fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the legal landscape is shifting all the time, and it's really difficult to define clearly what a psychedelic is and when does it end. You said, you have to buy it yourself. Obviously, you run your own retreats that you can recommend, I would assume. But I've had that, and I've struggled with that at the beginning when I started doing the work. When people asked me, "Hey, where should I go?" Because I don't want to take the responsibility to tell them what to do and guide them. And, I just don't want to claim that I have enough knowledge to say that, this is what you should be doing. I don't think we can ever really say that. So for me, the way that I work was always, well, you need to find out where feels right for you, and we can have a conversation about safety, but I'm not going to tell you how to be safe. But I do have the question a lot, right? Where should I go? How much should I take? So you don't advise people on, how to get anything, but you do say you need to go get it yourself. So I wonder where the line for you is. So how do you work with that when you get very clear questions like that?
Yeah, I mean, you can give hints, and
like what?
In case it's so first of all, in case if it's legal, you can of course tell it. Why not? I mean, you can say, oh, there are legal LSD derivatives, like 1D LSD. It's not really, it's probably, we don't know how safe it is. We can never say how safe it is.
That would be my issue, there. Right? Because if they say that's there, then there is an implication in some way, right? I share some responsibility, even if I put the disclaimer, it's like, hey, we don't really know anything about it or that much about it, or, we can't really have certainty, but it is available. As a client, if I put myself in their shoes and my coach tells me, you can buy it there, but disclaimer, then I'd say that's probably okay to do that.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
I don't know.
I think we should not take, like in the end, it's your responsibility, like the responsibility of the client, like the ultimate responsibility is his or hers. So that's one. Or theirs. Yeah. And one other thought is, I mean, if it's, I wouldn't overthink it too much. I think I wouldn't overthink it. I would just say this is legal. And what I also like to say is, if you really want to get it, if you really want to take psychedelics, you're going to do it. You're going to find it. That's all I can tell you. If you really want to do it, then you will find it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a bigger statement than perhaps you had intended, because I think if somebody really wants to have a psychedelic experience, they will. And they're coming to you for support. So there was an ethical question for me. Is it going to be better if I support them, because that's going to help them think about some stuff that's probably important, than doing it on their own and not thinking about some of that stuff? So that kind of helped me to be a bit more bold and a bit more out there, because I figured if I don't tell them things that are clearly harmful, even though I may or may not know that, I better not tell them anything. But I at least with me, they have a space to have a conversation and, being faced by my curiosity. Have you thought about Set&Setting? I was asking myself the question in the beginning, certainly was an ethical concern, whether people are better off having a support of someone who's not a trained therapist to seek a psychedelic experience and have some support, or somebody who's like had loads of experience with psychedelic substances. If they seek anybody for some support, that's already going to be supportive, especially if they have a good relationship with them and they trust them. And somebody can be curious about how are you going to keep yourself safe. You don't need to have had any experience with psychedelics in order to ask the question and, get some whole space for someone to be curious about it. I'm always a bit wary when somebody comes to me and they're trying to draw all the information out of me, because I often get the feeling that they're putting the responsibility onto me, and they're not actually wanting to do their own learning journey, but they are just, asking other people to take them by the hand and guide them towards the light. And then when it doesn't work, it's not their fault, it's the people's fault.
Yeah, that's dangerous, I think, especially in psychedelics. Especially, I think on our retreats, I can notice that. I think it's often like a personal trait of these people, like a personal something they do in many parts of their lives, where they just cannot take full responsibility for themselves. And so, of course, they don't do it with psychedelics either. So I don't think it's like only with psychedelics they don't do it. It's like something that repeats itself with their life. So I notice it.
Yeah, it's a challenging question to answer, right? Because it's better you talk about it with anybody than to not talk about it at all and just jump into an experience. But nowadays, there's so many skilled, trained, and able practitioners out there. Therapists are still kind of scarce, and coaches are still kind of scarce. But there's more people out there now that you can ask about this, and so many different ones, which makes it confusing. There's so many coaches who say, "Yeah, of course I'm going to take you. What doses, microdosing schedule is going to be good for you, and where to look for information. And if you read these 3 books, then you're going to be all set up. If you do this online course, then you're going to have enough information." So there seem to be not as many coaches who say, I'm going to hold space for you to figure that out. I mean, we're going to partner together and we can be curious about it together, but I'm not going to necessarily tell you the answers.
But I think it goes both ways. Like there are a lot of people, like we had also in the retreats, like they had their first experience and they say, now I understood it, and now I want to give retreats as well, and I want to guide people because I see that as my future, and it was told by the medicine. And I think you have a lot of people of them as well. And I personally, as a coach, would prefer to tell a little more to my client to make sure they have at least, they can take a decision out of different things and it's their decision. But I make sure that they don't go to people like that who are beautiful people and have good intentions, but they don't have the right tools and the experience to guide other people. So for me, is it in this way kind of making the danger a bit smaller or the things that can happen. And I would prefer to tell them at least a bit, even though not saying like you can buy it there and you can do this and you should use that and that. But there's a lot in this realm now that is growing that is not really healthy or with enough responsibility.
Yeah, I wonder where it comes from. I think where it comes from that you take psychedelics and now you think, let's heal the world, and it's easy. It was easy for me. And what I also noticed with psychedelics in my life and in many other people is that they only get deeper with the experience. As more as you take them, as more you notice, oh, my first experience, they were revealing and everything, but there's so much more. There's so much depth I haven't seen before, I haven't went down to. And I always tell people, if you think you understood people after a year of psychedelics, you haven't understand nothing. And if you think you have understood psychedelics after 10 years, you don't have understand. You can never really understand it. You can never think of yourself that you have understood it. You, in my mind at least, you always keep that, that learning mindset, that you're like that you trying to learn as many things as possible and stay humble with it, and don't think that you got it and that's why you need to show people how it's done with psychedelics. So I also try to keep that mindset when I put out information, that it's not like set in stone, like this is it, this is how you do it, this is bad, this is good, this is black, this is white. I think that's what psychedelics teaches anyway.
Yeah, tell us a bit more about the coaching that you do, because you said the most of the coaching that you do is not about psychedelics. But I would imagine, given what happens when you Google, probably also your name, what comes up, not just when you Google Psychedelica. I would assume that a lot of people approach you because of psychedelics or around psychedelics for coaching. So somebody comes. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, good. I know where you're coming from with the question. I think most people that I'm coaching are interested in psychedelics. Maybe they had already some experiences, but interestingly, the coaching revolves all about emotions and personality and like personal development coaching. And the experiences, I think the people. What I like to tell them when they're in my coaching, just take psychedelics aside now, and these substances, do it after our work together. Because what we're trying to do is to find the depth in you without the need of any external substances that need to help you with that. And I would say, I think 50% of the people I work with had already deeper psychedelic experience, but the other 50% haven't. But of course, they are interested in it, because I think it's like our niche. Our niche is interested in psychedelics, but it's not necessarily take psychedelics. It's more like be open to it, and I think that's why people come to us.
What made you take that decision that when somebody comes to you to say, well, let's do that after and let's first explore?
Again, I think it's more my experience that you don't need two teachers, or that you don't need that. Or let's say this way: the work I do with the people is already intense enough. So you don't need like the turbo button. You don't need to press the turbo button in the midst of our work. Press it afterwards, and afterwards is more effective anyway because you have a lot more content that you can process through with the psychedelic experience. So it's different. Sometimes we have people who have been on our retreats and they come to us for the personal development coaching, and sometimes it's the other way around. But also, but always I try to separate it, because I think it's like the coaching I do with people it's already intense. We meet every week. They get a lot of information, a lot of education. So I think that's enough.
Yeah, and so much what you can do. I mean, often what I experience in the coaching room or clients experience in the coaching room is an altered state of consciousness. Yeah, right? If you enter a zone of creativity, if you have somebody be with you in a way that a coach is with you, at least the way I see it, that's what you can do a lot of work that you don't need any psychedelics for. And are there doors? Which doors aren't you able to open? I mean, just as coaching is an accelerator for learning, I think psychedelics are an accelerator for learning. If it's held well, I don't know, at least that's how I think about it.
Yeah, true. I mean, the coach can be the psychedelic, so to say.
I like that.
Yeah, it feels like it sometimes.
Yeah, true. It's true. Like many coaching clients, they tell you like, "Oh, I'm a bit dizzy. I see things now that I haven't seen before, or I've had this epiphany during the session that, really quite changed my life." And it was not necessarily something new, just a reminder of what's important. You hear those things.
Change of perspective, right?
Exactly. And you hear just what we said is you can't quite tell whether that's a coaching session or a psychedelic sometimes. Other times, you know exactly whether that was a coaching session or psychedelic.
Have you ever done have you experienced you guys like with coaching on psychedelics?
No. I'm very careful about that because you're really opening. For me, I wouldn't touch it at the moment. Maybe at some point, but it's a very vulnerable. I mean, as a technical term, state to be in. As somebody's very open, I wouldn't want the responsibility of asking a question, offering something while somebody's on the experience. I can't say that I haven't been thinking about it and been tempted, because some tremendous outcomes, insights, learning I have experienced in conversation on a psychedelic trip. Maybe not on the height, but as it's like fading out, and that there's huge potential, I think. But personally, for me as a practitioner, I wouldn't want to have that responsibility with someone, as a service provider, so to speak. We are working in partnership, and that, it's not that, you pay me, I provide a service, but like there's a big responsibility when somebody's so open, because whatever I say is going to have a lot of weight. And I'm not comfortable with that.
But but isn't it that it depends also on which kind of substance you take and which kind of ritual is around that? And I mean, when you look at ayahuasca, for example, it is definitely more influenced by the people, shamans, facilitators who hold the ceremony, that the energy in the room is differently organized by them and influenced than I would say with the retreats we do in Holland, where it's like really the person is lying down there with a sleeping mask and eye shades, and it's the music playing, and it's your journey, and the facilitators are only there. But the more it becomes like a ceremony, there maybe it's not coaching, but you're definitely interfering with the processes of somebody, and sometimes it is necessary to interfere with the process to make the person not go crazy in that moment. So I think it is sometimes really good to do it to help the person not to go into it if it's not the right time to do it. Even though it's different to really like, okay, this is a coaching setting and we will take MDMA and then we will do a coaching session, for example, of course. But it's also a very blurry line in how much do you, as not the taking person part, do interfere with the whole session.
Yeah, and that's also similar in coaching without psychedelics, right? That there's this myth that we can be neutral and not influence someone. Because just by our presence and just by body language or nodding, smiling, frowning, just by being there, we're already influencing our clients. So I think, yes, we can do that more or less. And I think there's value in doing it less, right? While others believe that there's value in doing it more. And I get both philosophies. And I think the more we influence, the more we take responsibility. We share responsibility. And so when it comes to psychedelics, I want to take very little responsibility and make sure that my clients take the responsibility. So I liked the ceremonies. My personal experience was the ceremonies where the shaman was influencing less, not more. I liked the most where they held space rather than curate or guide a journey that was for me or for the group. So,
But I also wonder what Julia said, that it's really different with different substances. Because, for example, with MDMA, in the MDMA PTSD therapy, the therapists actually talk a lot. If you see the recordings from maps and so on, they talk all the time, and they try to hint things to the client and just help to guide them. Interestingly, as I said, I had a solo MDMA session before, and I actually got the idea and the manual from a PDF. And the PDF is called MDMA Solo. And it's actually from the Kaslania Foundation or something, a foundation which was originally founded from Timothy Leary and Ram Dass and so on. So like these kind of guys. So the PDF is really not so open towards governments, so to say, and also not so open towards therapists. They say that therapists guiding MDMA sessions, guiding psychedelic sessions, they not like they don't say it directly, but they just, you don't need them. They just want money. They want so much money for that guiding, but you can guide yourself. And that made me, that made me think, because I thought, but with MAPS at PTSD, I mean, they need the therapist, don't they? But then I tried it myself, and wow, it's so interesting if you do it completely alone. So that made me think, what's true, what's not. I think, many different substances, many different approaches, they all can be true.
I made a big note here, solo trips, question mark, because you mentioned it twice. Now you mentioned it a third time. My coaching rule is when something gets mentioned the third time, let's jump in there, because at the time I wanted to get to know you a bit better. But that brings up a lot of questions, right? Because I mean, why work with a coach? And the general consensus, I thought, maybe disagree, maybe agree, based on your recent experience, maybe there's some challenge to that, that the coach or the practitioner or the therapist is someone who can see blind spots, who can point some things out that you're not able to see at the moment, who's holding space and entering a relationship with you, that there's things by definition you cannot do on your own. And from what I know to be true in the industry or in the profession, in the craft, is that it's that relationship with someone else where the value is. So soloing is something super interesting. Why work with a coach if you could do it solo?
Yeah. And, I made the totally opposite experience in my darkness retreat a couple of weeks ago, where in the first 24 hours where I was totally alone, I didn't notice it at the time. But after my coach, he was a therapist. He came once a day inside for an hour talk. And after he told me some new things, how he saw what I was doing the 24 hours, he told me, you're just in your mind. Why don't you feel the things you say? And then I noticed, oh shit, it's true. I think I was just caught in my own thoughts, caught in my own mind. And I don't even know what would have happened if I would have been 7 days alone in the dark. I think I would just 7 days just how do you say, mich selbst verarschen. What do you say?
Make a fool of myself?
Yeah, make a fool of myself, because my thoughts make a fool of my thoughts and of myself. And I think I would just have not get nearly as much out of it as I would have got out of it as I did. With the therapist, with the coach who helped me every day to speak about the things I noticed and gave me new perspective on the things. So I would never say that the one side or the other is right. But again, with the MDMA, I really felt like it was important for me to feel alone. It was important for me to not have help, to not even have the possibility to ask for help, because that means I need to figure it out myself, which also helped me to find the connection to myself and not find the connection to somebody else if there's a struggle.
Mm-hmm. What about safety concerns? I mean, you're obviously very, very experienced in terms of how these substances affect you, etc.
Yeah.
What I'm a bit concerned about is that somebody's out there is listening to this and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it solo. Like, I mean, people tell you we need a guide, but then, Jascha told me that, solo is really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all about the substance in the first place. I think MDMA is a lot easier for people to take in general. I think it's a party substance and most people have good experiences with it. But of course, Set&Setting is really important. And I also thought about that. And in the manual, the one from Timothy Leary, they say even if you have like a really deep trauma, like sexual abuse, just take a little bit more MDMA. Just take it a little bit longer. They say you need to take for more hours with more higher dosage. So, I cannot support this view because I have no experience with it, but it needs to come somewhere. Somebody wrote it down, I guess, with some experience. But of course, in no way I want to say if you have deep trauma, take MDMA alone. But it's just, I'm just so confused at the moment. So this seems logical, but of course, what MAPS is doing is logical. I wonder. I just wonder.
Makes me think about a moment when the group after a retreat, after an experience, after a ceremony, was sitting in the forest, singing songs on the guitar, and somebody said, "This is the medicine, right? Us together, sharing, feeling a trusted space, having had an experience together. Yeah, the substance is important, but it's also not important." And I think about that often, and I thought about that now.
But I think that's one thing that is important. Like, what we also have we have this mosaic salon, like a meeting where all people can come to, and we share our things, so what we had as experiences, but also we started to give little inputs like to different topics. And last week it was the topic harm reduction and safer use. So we have this like a small input, and then we can talk about it and also share integration topics from people. But I think it is so important because I oftentimes see people coming to these groups. I don't know them. I don't know where they had their experience. But when they tell me, I bought this and this amount of this and this substance, and I went home and I locked the doors and then I took it. And for me, it's really shocking because I see so many people really freaking out in processes. And yes, some substances are more likely and others less, and whatever comes with that as well. But it is really important to think about what you do. And it is highly risky to just do that at home and not knowing really what you do. I mean, if you're very experienced still, I would say like with some substances, never do it alone, even though you have just a friend sitting in a kitchen who's hearing you bumping around if there's something happening. Not really guiding is also okay, but never be alone with what you do.
Yeah, that's, I guess, why as a coach, I want to work with people who are not in that healing spectrum, because it just eliminates so many of the ethical questions and the problems and the risks that are involved in that. And the further you go, the more you can arguably help people who are in pain, but also the more responsibility you take to be involved in that process with things that can really go wrong.
Yes. So there's no, I think the last few minutes we talked about this topic, and I feel like now for me it feels like I think there's no real answer for that. If it's good to do it alone or if it's not good to do it alone, it depends on the person, on the dosage, on the substance, on set and setting. But it's good to talk about it, and it's good for me. It's really helpful to always get new perspective on psychedelics, because it's still such like a new thing. You can learn so much about it, and the experience I had solo last weekend was really gave me new perspective on MDMA. And you know how I am. I made an experience, and then I want to share it with people. But you're right. We should be careful with. Okay, just because I did it this way and I'm experienced, it doesn't mean anybody else should do it this way, or just try to imitate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
What do you wish you had known when you started out doing this kind of work, for maybe something to share with a coach who's considering entering the field? Maybe they're already a coach and they're thinking about working with psychedelics, or maybe they had some experience with psychedelics, they want to do coaching, or maybe they're fresh and they're listening to this conversation for some reason and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to get into it. Well, what piece of advice would you give?
Mm-hmm. Care about yourself a lot. So do a lot of self-care. Do not forget yourself. Do not think because you have reached a point where you want to do this work, your work is over. Not at all. It's the beginning of your work as well. A new path opens up, and be really curious and try to learn as many things about yourself as you can. Coaching itself, you do also coach yourself a little bit with it. You learn a lot about yourself with it, and try to always reflect on what you do. And just that's what I would say. So try not to focus on the client too much. So it's all about the clients. I need to make them happy. More about make you happy as well. It's important. I think that's something I forgot in the beginning a little bit, but it was a learning experience.
Great. Any particular self-care tips that you can share?
Take psychedelics.
Solo trips in the darkness.
Yeah. It's like honestly, like do these kind of things. Like don't take time for yourself. Go on retreats, make new experiences, have a coach yourself, and take time for yourself. I think that's something I learned for myself, that if you just do that one thing, take time for yourself, then everything will be fine. Then you're good. Just take time for yourself, and that's something so difficult. I don't know why nowadays. Or maybe it has been like this forever, but it's so difficult to just at 8 p.m, just don't do anything more now, whatever it is. Just sit down, do nothing. Take your journal, write down a few things, and just feel, experience what comes up. See what thought comes next, what feeling comes next. Go into it. And I think that's something I learned in the darkness, because there's literally nothing to do. There's like nothing to do for 20 hours, and that's a big learning. What was a big learning for me? Just take time for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that resonates with me on a different level right now in this period of my life. You have no idea. Yeah. There's the saying that if you don't have 10 minutes to meditate a day, then you should probably meditate 30.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Julia, do you want to ask anything else? Because otherwise I think it might be a good time to go into our last segment.
Yes, I think time-wise, it's good to go there, since it always takes longer than we think.
I noticed that with your guests. But I can also answer them shortly.
Well, it's up to you, right? So take as much or as little time as you want. We know this is always packed of value, so thank you in advance. No pressure. You mentioned you read a lot of books. So one question we always ask is, what are some of the books or people, for that matter, that had a big influence on your work with psychedelics or as a coach? Ideally both.
So many. It always changes. For example, right now, I can tell you right now, I'm reading Gabor Mate a lot, his new book, The Myth of Normal, which makes me think a lot about the things I said before, like, okay, you can function normally, but you're still traumatized, and it's okay. It's normal. That's our culture. It is like that. And regarding psychedelics. Wait, let me feel about this a little bit.
I love that you say, let me feel about this.
Yeah. I think there hasn't been like one strong influence for me. I just read all the books about psychedelics, being it like the classic Michael Pollan, or being
to change your mind.
Yeah, the classic book, or the Psychedelic Explorer's Guide, or also like these spiritual influences, like what is his name? The Power of Now.
Eckhart Tolle.
Like all these standard books and these classic psychedelic books, I read all of them. I even read like the niche books about 5-methoxy DMT, because I was once upon a time I was really interested in 5-methoxy, and I read all of that. But there haven't been like a strong influence for me. I think actually the book by Eckhart Tolle, that was really important for me, because that like opened a new world for me that psychedelics showed me, but I couldn't understand it. I couldn't grasp it. I couldn't because I was so moving on rails through my life, like a train. I was just moving on rails, and I didn't know that I'm moving on rails. And I think the book by Eckhart Tolle that showed me that there are that I'm on rails, and there are many other rails, and I could drive wherever I want, and all these things.
Any coaching books you've read that influenced you, or that you found particularly valuable?
No.
How come?
Maybe I did, and I just don't know.
Yeah, I wonder, because there's so much. I mean, I'm biased, right? Because there's like many coaching books in those shelves.
I mean, you are Mr. Coaching.
I come from coaching first, and then I moved into this, right? It was something very personal, and then I realized there's so much potential there. So I'm biased because I come from coaching into this. I appreciate it's not everybody's journey. But given that, you call it coaching, and that there's lots of coaches that you could learn from, I wonder that didn't feel a need, I guess, to read into coaching, or there wasn't, I don't know. So I'm just trying to make sense of that.
Yeah.
Because I see that a lot with people who work in this industry. They're psychedelic coaches, but they've never done a coaching training, and they may or may not have read any coaching books, So I'm trying to make sense of that. There's so much help available.
A lot.
Well, that counts. I'll take it.
Yeah, maybe you are the influence.
Yeah, but it's different, right? Because we're talking about it, and it's not foundational coaching skills we're hinting on them. There's a philosophy there, but it's very different when you actually read about coaching methodologies or contracting methods, or generally people's experiences, systemic lenses, or there's so much helpful stuff written in the coaching area that is immediately relevant to the work with psychedelics if you translate it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it. But I think on the one hand, as I said in the beginning, I learned a lot about myself. I made many experiences, and I learned about psychedelics and about psychology a lot. And on the other hand, I listened to a lot of podcasts. I listened to, for example, your coaching podcast. I listened to many things. I think I'm just really, it's difficult for me now to pinpoint one source where I learned a lot about coaching. I think it's more like the whole spectrum I learned in my life that, and I say that of myself, that made me a good coach. I know it because I see the results, but I don't have the book or the training that I can speak of now.
I mean, that makes sense, right? I talk to so many people who are just natural at holding space and asking curious questions and suspending their own judgments. And you will clearly do fantastic work. I mean, I've loved your website. What was that offer? There was a coaching offer with video testimonials and people describing their journey when they worked with you and your now wife, no?
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about a lot. Unlock yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's clear you're doing incredible work. So in the beginning, I was like, all these coaches who haven't done their training. And then I realized a lot of coaches who didn't do their training, they actually do much better coaching than a lot of those with training that I see. So sometimes I relaxed a bit more.
sometimes that I don't know, it's not your personal attitude, but that attitude by trained people towards untrained people that they are not trained, and that makes them worse practitioner, whatever. Sometimes that also makes me feel like, oh shit, maybe I need that training, because before that, if I don't do the training, I'm not good enough.
One more training, and then one more training, and then I'll be good enough.
Yeah. So sometimes I feel that that fear, but then on the other hand, I feel like I'm just staying true to myself. I'm staying bold. It works. Let's see.
Right. Cool. Yeah. Well, that starts a conversation, I'm sure. Thank you. What's next?
Maybe the future trends. What do you see? What do you think are the future trends in the world regarding coaching and psychedelics?
Oh yeah, I'm always interested in the future.
Listeners should have from your wavy gaze. I love that.
Funnily, I always do that when I think about the future of psychedelics. I would do like, see the future. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's so interesting. I love it. I love psychedelic space so much because it's so unsure. I love the insecurity of the future. We can never know what's gonna happen, but we can predict. And we can see what happened in the last couple of years and how could that play out. But on the other hand, I also try to be really realistic, not too optimistic, because what I noticed as well with the psychedelic space is that we're putting psychedelics on a bit too high podium.
Pedestal.
Pedestal. It's they're not magic pills, and I have seen countless of people who took psychedelics and they didn't change anything at all. Like incredibly many people who do not integrate their experience because it's so hard. And Julia, you know that probably as well. It's the integration code. The experience itself, to integrate it, that's the work. That's what's really difficult. And what I'm hoping and what we're trying with Mosaic, to put more emphasis on the integration. The interesting thing though is that it doesn't sell well. Nobody wants to buy the integration. Nobody wants to buy the work. I don't want to do the work. I just want to have the experience, because afterwards, the days after, I felt like perfect. I felt like this is how I can feel. Wow, it's amazing. And what I hope is that we can not only go into we need to do more integration, but more educate people about the attitude you should have, which is good to have when working with psychedelics, which is, I want to develop my personality, I want to develop my life, I want to change, I want to work on myself. It's going to be really hard. And if you have that attitude, even without psychedelics, it's like the best attitude you can have for life. It's really important. And then you take psychedelics as well. Wow, you're gonna have like a booster for your development. And I hope that it's going more into this direction with psychedelics. That we more talk about the psyche, about personal development, about psychology. I think that should be like the trend, like parenting the psychedelic trend. Like, I don't know how we would call the trend, like the psychology, personal development therapy, I don't know, the mental health. I think that's that's the thing. So I hope that mental health will be like a really super trend, and psychedelics will be the cousin of that trend. But I'm a little bit pessimistic sometimes when I see what's happening in the space, how the media is talking about it, and especially what you said before about how some new formed companies work with psychedelics, how people, and I have seen that, who took had a few LSD experiences, now building a big LSD empire where they do like retreats and everything. And it's difficult for me to, I don't want to be judging them or anything, but I feel like there's a kind of danger coming with that. But on the other hand, it's not my responsibility, and whenever you do whenever there's something that's helpful, there are risks, and some people will also expose these risks more to people. Could also be more about the future.
What else do you see? Jascha?
I see many things. I see so many things. Trust me, I see so many things. I hope that it's going to be really. I think we need like not only like a legal change, which we have now with Oregon and whatnot, like where they legalize or decriminalize psychedelics. I think we need more now of a social change as well. Like, celebrities and so on, they need to take psychedelics. They need to talk about it. Because
that started? I mean, that's in full swing, isn't it?
Definitely. In Germany, not. I almost don't know any celebrity who speaks about psychedelics. But in the US, I know Will Smith and Miley Cyrus and whatever, they all also talk about it. Or Joe Rogan. Because it's the same as with cannabis, isn't it? Like, only because something is legal or illegal doesn't make it let's put it this way, the social acceptance of a drug is much more important for legalization than, let's say, the studies or like the science. So that's why I think that would be really important for us psychedelic people to talk about it really openly. And especially, like, for example, when you're a scientist working in the psychedelic field, talk about your own experiences. We are at the point now where it's not like a killer of your career, because that's how it was before. Like, it's a career killer if you do something psychedelics. Like, that was in the science community. They thought like that. It's not anymore like this. Just talk about the experience openly. And I think that's going to be a real important factor for the future of psychedelics.
Oh yeah, I thought about it long and hard before I posted or published my first event, getting coaches together to talk about whether, coaching psychedelics make sense together, how it might work, ask some questions, get some people together. And I remember my wife saying, do you really want to post that on Facebook? I'm like, yeah, good question. Because it existed in a certain circle, but if I now, be more vocal about it. But I agree, it's a really important thing, because the more we can have the conversation over ground, not just that for the field, it's important and more people have access to it, but otherwise people, they still do it. They're just less safe because the conversation is not accessible.
Yeah, I think if you don't talk about something, if you handle it like it's something you don't talk about, I think it will also appear like that for the general public. Oh, see, yeah, they don't want to talk about that much because it's something bad. Of course, why? Yeah. So I think that's also an attitude I want to bring forward to people. Just pretend it's normal, then it's gonna be normal. It's gonna become normal. Yeah, that's how we normalize.
Yeah, thank you. Talked about differences between coaching and therapy. We had some words of warning or some advice. Have you ever had to stop working with a client, coaching client? Kind of touched on referral, but I wonder if there's an example, somebody you can think about, obviously without breaking confidentiality.
Let's say we suggested him to rather go to a therapist, and that we're not the right for him. Because sometimes, for example, we do also group coaching, and sometimes it felt like there was one particular person I'm thinking about. It felt like the group is helping him a lot, but he's not helping the group. It's not the right for him. And going into a one-on-one coaching with him didn't seem like something we want to do. So that's where we told him, yeah, maybe you look otherwise.
Good. And last one, sort of, last difficult one, perhaps, depending. Okay. Maybe it's very clear to you. But if you could take over the screen or screens of any person or any amount of people, Could be Donald Trump, or could be the whole world, or could be everybody in Germany, or every celebrity in Germany, perhaps. Not trying to ask a leading question. If you had a person's or groups or humanity's attention for a minute, what would you tell them?
So, would it also have like language localization so that
everybody would understand? It would be a universal language. Good question.
Universal language. That's good. 15 seconds, you said? No, how much?
A minute.
A minute. I noticed now that I'm really going. I have not thought about this question before because I knew you're gonna ask me actually because I know the question, but I think I'm trying to really logically think about it. What would have the most impact, and what kind of message could we create that really, as I said in the beginning, reaches every person wherever they are? Because if I say now, take psychedelics, okay, this doesn't help anybody, not many people. And even if I tell them, for example, what I would like to tell them is that the solution to all your challenges in your life, whatever the challenge is, and even if the challenge is that you think you don't have any challenges, which is a big challenge, the solution is already in yourself. You find all the answers in yourself. You're just too distracted a little bit in your life to see it. And if this is one thing I would say, and the other thing I think would be that we are all, how would I say that? That it's okay to be not okay. Yeah. Simply said, it's okay to be not okay.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe,
welcome.
Yeah. Last question then.
Julia, I should say, because I called you Julia. And Julia, like
Julia.
The triumvirate of your name.
Yeah, it's just a multi-language name. Our last question, since I know where to find you and how to reach you, but the listeners don't know how to find you, where to find you. So where do they need to go if they want to know more about you?
Yeah. So I think one important thing about that is if you don't speak German, this doesn't make a lot of sense to look for me.
You can have the translation button up there. It's not the best translation, but
yeah,
maybe
that's true. That's true. I think but I do everything in German because I felt in the beginning. I also thought about that when I started going out. So I can't speak English. I could do it all in English as well. But I think I thought like the poor German market, the poor German people, nobody dares to speak about it openly in German. Come on, we need to do everything in German. It needs to be all German. And that's why how I started my YouTube channel, Set&Setting podcast, Set&Setting. You'll find it. Just look for it. And our retreat, Set&Setting retreat. And that's what I do or what we do. And I hope we will do it for a very, very, very long time.
Would you be open to work with someone in English if somebody approached you for coaching, personal coaching?
Probably not. Probably not. Probably not, cool. No.
Alrighty. Well, then we have nothing left, but thank you. I mean, we have lots of things left. But given the time constraints of what we're doing here, I just want to thank you so much for your time and for your work.
It's already 2 hours. Wow.
Yeah.
Almost 2 hours. I thought it's maybe like 1. Okay.
So fast.
Wow. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure. I could talk on for hours, and I think we should do this in real life sometime. It would be even nicer.
That'd be fantastic.
In German, on my podcast.
Yes.
Perfect. Yes.
Thank you, Jascha.
Thank you. you.